the oppressive silence of the night, feeling a frightening loneliness when you breathe. These are all feelings experienced in the corridors of a dark hospital during night shifts. Tonight, I will prove to you that this feeling is real with stories. Additionally, sometimes in the middle of the night, anger suddenly comes from people, and this anger can become deadly in an instant. These stories took place at St. Vincent Medical Center in Austin, Texas, and prove that the most terrifying moments in a hospital are not always related to supernatural forces. Sometimes the most terrifying thing you'll encounter is the desperation of people pushed to the extreme. Story 1. Code Gray in the Ice. My name is Amanda Rodriguez. I am 31 years old. And I am in the middle of another night where I feel like I am slowly passing through the best years of my life. I have been working as an intensive care nurse at St. Vincent Medical Center for 7 years. I am an intensive care specialist, which means I treat the most critically ill patients in the hospital, those on ventilators, those recovering from major surgeries, and those whose families are forced to make impossible decisions about life support. The ICU is on the 3rd floor, and it's the most secure unit in the hospital. You need a key card to get in. Visitors are strictly limited, and we have security cameras everywhere. We have protocols for everything: medical emergencies, equipment failures, even combative patients. But what happened on Friday night, November 17th, showed me that no protocol can prepare you for a family member who's lost all sense of reality. I was working my usual shift, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., when a 67-year-old man named Robert Chen was admitted after suffering a massive heart attack at his home in South Austin. He'd been down for almost 8 minutes before paramedics got his heart beating again, and the lack of oxygen had caused significant brain damage. He was unconscious, on a ventilator, and according to Dr. Martinez's assessment, he had maybe a 10% chance of meaningful recovery. Robert's son, Kevin Chen, arrived at the hospital around 10:30 p.m. Kevin was 35 years old, about 6'1", and maybe 220 pounds, a big guy who worked in construction and looked like he could handle himself in a fight. He was still covered in concrete dust from the job site when he got the call about his father. "How is he?" Kevin asked as soon as he saw me. The paramedic on the phone said it was bad, but he's going to be okay, right? I've had to deliver bad news to families hundreds of times, but it never gets easier. "Mr. Chen, your father is in critical condition. Dr. Martinez will be able to give you more details, but I want you to prepare yourself. The damage to his brain was extensive." Kevin stared at me for a long moment, and I could see something shift in his expression. "What do you mean, damage to his brain? He's going to wake up, right? Mr. Chen, why don't we sit down and no." Kevin's voice got louder. "Don't give me that look. Don't give me the let's sit down speech. My dad is strong. He's been working construction for 40 years. He doesn't give up on anything, and I'm not giving up on him." Dr. Martinez arrived a few minutes later and explained the situation in more clinical terms. Kevin listened without interrupting, but I could see his hands clenching and unclenching at his sides. "So you're telling me he's brain dead?" Kevin asked when Dr. Martinez finished. "Not brain dead, but the damage is severe. At this point, we're looking at comfort care options." "I'm sorry, Mr. Chen." That's when Kevin exploded. "Comfort care? You mean you want to kill him? You want me to sign some papers so you can unplug him and free up the bed for someone else?" "Mr. Chen, I understand you're upset," Dr. Martinez began. "Upset?" Kevin stepped closer to the doctor, and I instinctively moved toward the panic button we keep behind the nurses' station. "You people don't know what you're talking about. My dad's a fighter. He just needs time." "Sir, I need you to lower your voice," I said firmly. "This is the ICU, and we have other patients who need." Kevin spun around and pointed his finger directly at my face. "You don't get to tell me what to do. That's my father in there, and you people are trying to murder him because it's easier than doing your jobs." Dr. Martinez left to call security, but Kevin didn't notice. He was completely focused on me now, and something in his eyes made my skin crawl. This wasn't just grief, this was rage looking for a target. "I know how this works," Kevin said, stepping closer to me. "You people see an old man with no insurance, and you want him gone. Well, I've got news for you. I'm not going anywhere, and neither is he. Mr. Chen, your father has excellent insurance through his union. This isn't about money. Then what is it about? Why are you so eager to kill him? For the next 4 hours, Kevin refused to leave the ICU. He sat in the chair next to his father's bed, talking to him like he could hear every word. At first, it was heartbreaking. Then it started getting weird. Dad, these people are trying to convince me you're not going to wake up. But I know better. I know you can hear me. Just move your finger if you can hear me. Just once. Kevin would stare at his father's hand for minutes at a time, convinced he was seeing movement that wasn't there. There. Did you see that? He moved his finger. He's responding. I checked on them every 30 minutes, and each time Kevin became more agitated and more convinced that we were lying to him about his father's condition. At 2:47 a.m., things got dangerous. I was adjusting Mr. Chen's IV when Kevin grabbed my wrist. Not roughly, but firmly enough that I couldn't pull away. You've been giving him the wrong medication, Kevin said quietly. I've been watching you, and you're giving him something to keep him unconscious. You're drugging him so he can't wake up. Mr. Chen, please let go of my arm. These medications are keeping your father stable. Bullshit. Kevin's grip tightened. I want to see the bottles. I want to read every label. Sir, I need you to release my arm right now, or I'm calling security. Go ahead and call them. But I'm not letting you poison my father anymore. That's when I realized Kevin wasn't just grieving. He was having some kind of mental break. The stress, the lack of sleep, the reality of losing his father, it had all combined into something dangerous. I pressed the panic button with my free hand. Kevin saw me do it, and his whole demeanor changed. You bitch. You're calling them to throw me out so you can kill him while I'm gone. He let go of my arm, but stepped between me and the door. Nobody's leaving this room until someone explains to me why my father isn't getting better. Security arrived within 2 minutes, but Kevin was ready for them. These people are trying to murder my father, he announced as soon as they walked in. They're giving him the wrong medications, and then telling me there's no hope, so I'll authorize them to pull the plug. The security guards, both men I'd worked with for years, tried to reason with Kevin, but he was beyond reason now. He'd constructed an entire conspiracy theory in his head, and we were all part of it. Mr. Chen, Officer Williams, said calmly, "We need you to step away from the nurse and come with us. You can visit your father again tomorrow, but I'm not leaving him alone with these people," Kevin shouted. "They'll kill him the minute I walk out that door." What happened next still gives me nightmares. Kevin lunged at me, grabbing me around the throat with both hands. "Tell me what you gave him," he screamed, his face inches from mine. "Tell me what's in those 4 bags." I couldn't breathe. Kevin's hands were huge, and he was squeezing hard enough that spots started dancing in my vision. The 2 security guards grabbed him and tried to pull him off, but he was in full panic mode now, completely convinced that I was trying to kill his father. "She's poisoning him," Kevin kept screaming as they finally managed to pry his hands away from my throat. "She's poisoning him, and you're helping her." It took 4 security guards and 2 Austin police officers to get Kevin out of the ICU, even as they dragged him toward the elevators. He was yelling about how we were all murderers, how his father was going to wake up and prove us wrong, how he was going to sue the hospital and have us all arrested. My throat was bruised for 2 weeks. I had to file a police report, and Kevin was arrested for assault. But the worst part was that Robert Chen died 3 days later, and Kevin never got to say goodbye because he was banned from the hospital. I've thought about that night a lot since it happened. Kevin wasn't evil. He was a son who couldn't accept that his father was dying, but grief and desperation can turn even good people into something dangerous, especially when they convince themselves that someone else is to blame for their pain. It is very difficult to tell a family a medical truth. Have you experienced this yourself? It is difficult to get them to accept it, and it is hard to believe. Doctors are seen as beings who just do their job in hospitals and do not understand the person in front of them emotionally. They just go into surgery, give the injection, and the person lying on the table feels like just another ordinary person to them. Do you think that's how it is? Because that's how most people think about me. I'd like to hear how other healthcare workers handle such situations, because I don't want to go through something like that again. Story 2. The patient who wouldn't leave. My name is Marcus Johnson. I am 33 years old, and I drive a blue 2019 Honda Civic to and from the hospital. I usually arrive with the music blaring, trying to start the day on a cheerful note. But this was a time when I didn't know that my happiness would come to an end. I am 1.83 meters tall, weigh approximately 82 kilograms, and am considered somewhat handsome. At least that's what people around me say. I work as a security officer at St. Vincent Medical Center. During this time, I have dealt with various situations, from drunk drivers brought in by ambulance to gang members trying to end fights that started on the street. However, the most distressing situation I have encountered so far involved a patient who refused to believe that their treatment was complete. St. Vincent's discharge policy is straightforward. Once a doctor clears you for release, you have 2 hours to arrange transportation and leave the premises. We're not a hotel, and we need the beds for incoming patients. Most people understand this. They're usually eager to get home after days or weeks of hospital food and uncomfortable beds. But every once in a while, you get someone who sees the hospital as a safe haven from whatever problems are waiting for them in the real world. On Wednesday morning, October 25th, at exactly 8:47 a.m., I got a call from discharge planning about a problem patient in room 218. Gerald Hoffman, a 58-year-old homeless man, had been treated for pneumonia for 6 days and was medically cleared for discharge. His insurance through the state would cover a taxi ride to the downtown Austin shelter, but Gerald was refusing to leave. He says he's still sick, explained Janet Morrison, the discharge coordinator. Dr. Peterson examined him this morning and found nothing wrong, but Gerald insists he's having chest pains and difficulty breathing. We think he's faking symptoms to extend his stay. Gerald Hoffman was about 5 feet 8, maybe 140 pounds soaking wet, with long gray hair and a beard that looked like it hadn't been trimmed in months. His clothes, which we'd washed and returned to him, were threadbare and patched in multiple places. He'd been living on the streets for approximately 3 years, according to his intake paperwork, and this was his 4th admission to St. Vincent's in the past year. When I arrived at room 218, Gerald was sitting on the edge of his bed, fully dressed but making no move to pack his few belongings. "Mr. Hoffman," I said as professionally as possible, "I understand you're concerned about your health, but Dr. Peterson has cleared you for discharge. We need this room for incoming patients." Gerald looked up at me with watery blue eyes that held more intelligence than I had expected. "You don't understand, Officer Johnson. I can feel it in my chest. There's still something wrong. If I leave now, and something happens to me, it'll be on your conscience. Sir, if you're experiencing new symptoms, the nurses can have Dr. Peterson re-examine you. But if he clears you again, you'll need to leave the hospital." "I've already been examined 3 times this morning," Gerald said, with a slight smile. "Each time, I tell them about the chest pains, and each time they say I'm fine. But I know my body, and I know I'm not ready to go back out there." That's when I realized what was really happening. Gerald wasn't worried about his health. He was terrified of returning to the streets. The hospital represented safety, warmth, regular meals, and people who were required to treat him with basic human dignity. Outside these walls, he was just another homeless man that most people crossed the street to avoid. "Mr. Hoffman," I said, sitting down in the visitor's chair, "I understand this is difficult, but we have social workers who can help you find housing assistance, job training programs." "You don't understand anything," Gerald interrupted, and for the first time, there was an edge to his voice. "I've been through those programs. I filled out those forms. I've sat in those waiting rooms for hours just to be told there's no space, no funding, no help available. This hospital is the only place in this entire city that has to take care of me. And now you want to throw me back out on the street to die." I tried a different approach. "Sir, there's a shelter downtown that has space available. The taxi is already arranged." "The shelter?" Gerald laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You mean the place where they steal your shoes while you sleep? Where you have to fight for a spot on the floor? Where they kick you out at 6 a.m., regardless of the weather?" "No thank you, Officer Johnson. I'll take my chances here." Over the next hour, I watched Gerald transform from a compliant patient into something much more concerning. Every time a nurse entered the room, he would suddenly double over in apparent pain, clutching his chest and gasping for breath. The performances were increasingly dramatic, and when the medical staff would examine him, he'd become belligerent if they suggested he was faking. "You people took an oath," he shouted at Dr. Peterson during the 4th examination. "You swore to do no harm, and you're trying to send a sick man out to die in the cold. Mr. Hoffman, Dr. Peterson said patiently, your vital signs are normal, your blood work is clear, and your chest x-ray shows no signs of infection. You are medically stable for discharge. Then you're incompetent, Gerald snapped. I want a second opinion. I want to see a specialist. I want more tests. That's when Gerald's strategy became clear to me. He was going to demand test after test, second opinion after second opinion, anything to extend his stay. And if we refused, he'd become increasingly disruptive until we had no choice but to keep him for psychiatric evaluation. Around 2 p.m., Gerald escalated his tactics. When the discharge nurse came to escort him out, he collapsed on the floor, claiming he was having a heart attack. Call 911. He wheezed dramatically. I'm having chest pains. This is exactly what I was trying to tell you. Dr. Peterson ordered an EKG, which came back completely normal. Gerald then claimed the machine was broken. When they brought in a second EKG machine, Gerald said the technician didn't know how to use it properly. I'm not leaving this hospital until someone takes my symptoms seriously, Gerald announced to everyone in the room. And if you try to force me out, I'll collapse on the sidewalk right in front of the main entrance, where everyone can see how St. Vincent Medical Center treats its patients. That's when I realized Gerald wasn't just trying to extend his stay. He was threatening the hospital's reputation. A homeless man collapsing in front of our main entrance, claiming we'd refused him medical care, would be a public relations nightmare. Mr. Hoffman, I said carefully, if you're truly experiencing medical symptoms, we want to help you. But if you're making false claims about chest pains and heart problems, that's considered fraud. Gerald's expression hardened. Are you calling me a liar, Officer Johnson? Are you saying I don't know when I'm in pain? I'm saying that if Dr. Peterson clears you for discharge, and you continue to claim medical emergencies, we'll have no choice but to involve the Austin Police Department. Good, Gerald said with a cold smile. Call them. Let them arrest a sick man for the crime of being poor and homeless. See how that looks on the evening news. For the next 3 hours, Gerald turned room 218 into his personal fortress. He barricaded himself in the bathroom when discharge personnel tried to enter. He pulled the emergency call button repeatedly, claiming shortness of breath each time nurses responded. He even called 911 from the room phone, telling the dispatcher that St. Vincent Medical Center was trying to force a heart patient onto the streets. By 6 p.m., Gerald had been medically cleared for discharge 4 times by 3 different doctors. He'd had 2 EKGs, a chest x-ray, blood work, and a complete physical examination. Everything was normal, but he refused to leave. That's when Dr. Peterson made the decision that Gerald had been counting on. Mr. Johnson, Dr. Peterson said quietly, pulling me aside in the hallway, I'm ordering a psychiatric evaluation. If Mr. Hoffman is genuinely delusional about his medical condition, he may be a danger to himself. We'll need to hold him for 72-hour observation. Gerald had one. He'd successfully manipulated the system to get exactly what he wanted, an extended stay at the hospital. But his victory came with a cost that I don't think he'd considered. A 72-hour psychiatric hold meant Gerald would be transferred to the locked psychiatric ward. He wouldn't be in a regular room with cable TV and room service. He'd be in a sterile, monitored environment with patients who had serious mental health issues. He wouldn't be able to leave the ward, wouldn't have access to outside phone calls, and wouldn't be able to manipulate staff with fake medical emergencies. When the psychiatric team arrived to transfer Gerald, his whole demeanor changed. Wait, he said as they approached his bed. I think I'm feeling better now. Maybe I was just tired. I'm ready to go to the shelter, but it was too late. Once Dr. Peterson had ordered the psychiatric evaluation, Gerald was committed to the 72-hour hold. As they wheeled him toward the psychiatric ward, Gerald looked at me with something between defeat and rage. You think you're so smart, don't you? He said quietly. But I'll be back. Maybe not next week, maybe not next month, but I'll be back. And next time, I'll be smarter about it. Gerald was released from the psychiatric ward after 72 hours. And true to his word, he was readmitted to St. Vincent's 2 months later with symptoms of food poisoning. Then again 6 weeks after that, with a suspected broken rib. Each time he tried new tactics to extend his stay, and each time we eventually had to force him to leave. I still see Gerald around downtown Austin sometimes. usually near the bus station or outside the public library. He always nods at me like we're old friends who shared some kind of understanding. In a way, I guess we did. The thing that bothers me most about the Gerald Hoffman situation isn't that he tried to game the system, it's that the system forces people like him to become manipulative just to survive. How desperate do you have to be to fake a heart attack just to get a warm bed and 3 meals a day? Have you ever encountered a situation where someone in need of help manipulated you? Since Gerald's situation is more common than most people realize, I'm curious to know how you view this incident. The third story will be the most mind-opening and hair-raising one. It will be here again tomorrow, at the same time. I decided to save it for last and tell you about it because of a sudden change of heart. See you tomorrow at the same time, my friend.